Well, good evening. Is anybody coming to this? I don't know. Good evening, Finch. I don't think there's anyone else here yet. Well, let's see. I'm on my way home from work, which was a failure of a day again for making money. But that's not going to stop me from trying to do what I can here. With talking about this Jesus return, I keep on, bringing this up because it doesn't matter why. Because maybe it's just, I'm not gonna stoop to slanting everything in a negative way because so few people really care about this story. All it takes is one or two, to start, seeing what Tiendo offered and being curious about it to encourage us. But even if nobody is curious about it, I'm still encouraged. But, I spent a lot of years working on my book, and about 10 years. And, I named it Tiendo, the Father and Jesus, Heaven's Gate, UFO Two Witnesses, taking in all the titles, if you want to look at it that way, of that applied to Tiendo starting in 1975, I guess, more or less, when they first went public. And of course, for anybody that doesn't know it, Tiendo didn't teach out of the Bible. They didn't come to believe what they believed based on based on studying Jesus' life. I mean, T was familiar with Jesus and the Old Testament, New Testament material. Being her vehicle being raised in, I believe, a Baptist family, which I don't know too much about her vehicle's parents. And Doe was raised in a Presbyterian, so that would have been the rebellion from Catholicism, which reformed certain things that Catholicism was still glued to, with the symbolism and the statues and the genuflecting and all the dogma that defines the religion, and is part of the reason why it has almost nothing to do with what Jesus taught. Because if you can't recognize, if you refuse to take a look at what's happening today, and it has been happening for a long time, and if you're so blinded by what the media tells you things are, and you don't have an ear to hear or an eye to see, even though the next level works very hard, literally, to give people opportunities to wake up more, because you never really awaken. It's not a state, a condition. It's not something you arrive at. It's something that if you're a seeker, you're continuously seeking to know more, to understand more, to and to want to be of service to the next level. So there's a lot of things I could talk about, of course, but I want to focus on the part 3 of this Jesus material. I'll just summarize that part 1 and 2. Part 1 had to do with basically defining the term Son of Man as being offspring of human, Homo sapien, offspring. In other words, saying that he was going to, which was Jesus referred to himself as well as others referred to themselves as, like Adam and Enoch, and who were incarnations of the same soul that was later in Moses, and then Elijah, and then Jesus, and then Doe, which wasn't by Doe's declaration, but was by T's declaration. And that's where the mainstream media finds fault in one of the latest things that was done by ABC, the 2020 people, to where they said that, T told him who he was and all that. So they just twisted it to mean that he was like a naive follower of T. And she convinced him that he was somebody special, which he already knew that he had come from the next level, because he and T both arrived at that individually at the same time, even though T was more aware of the overview of their task before Doe was, and would say to Doe, I'm here to just get you started, and then I'm going back. And it ended up that's what she did. She got him started, and then she went back. Now, the getting started part isn't technically the official Jesus return, because it's two individuals coming back. So that's not, even though Jesus said that the kingdom of God was returning, the kingdom of the Father was returning, the many-membered kingdom level of living beings was what was returning, because the next level doesn't do things willy-nilly, and they do things as a crew, because it takes a lot of effort for them to work with all the humans that have the potential to grow and are showing that potential to the next level that they want to grow. So they have to have hands-on work with everybody, and that could be millions of people. We don't know how many people they work with at varying times, depending on their own thirst to separate from their humanness. The people that are satisfied with their humanness because they've become rich and famous, or just happy that they have what they wanted in life, and they don't really want to upset the apple cart, don't really fall into, from my understanding, don't really fall into the category of individuals that the next level is paying close attention to, unless, you know, they project, they're asking because of problems that they have in life that they want solutions to, and they're willing to, you know, search for the highest source they can imagine existing, even whatever language they do that in, whatever religion they're associated with, or whatever belief system they're associated with, or none at all. Just wanting help, and they're desperate for help, and so the next level can perceive that and on their computer systems and respond to it, because they get signals that are radio signals. That's one of the ways that they get signals from humans, but they're radio signals that humans don't have any ability to recognize, transmit, or receive. I mean, in terms of actually, maybe they can see them on the spectrum of frequencies, but they don't know what to do with it. It doesn't translate to something that they can put through their radio, their receivers, or record to make some sense out of, if they can perceive some of it. Because the next level didn't give them that know-how yet. And you can see why the next level wouldn't give them that know-how, because then they'd be aware of the next level's communications, potentially, and they'd also be aware of what humans were thinking, if they could perceive those radio signals. Because it's not through our out loud voices that we're projecting that frequency that is translated as our thoughts. This is all scientific. Okay, so with that said, the Son of Man was that he was coming back, incarnate. And he said that in other ways too. You know, talking about Noah, the time of Noah, and they'd be marrying, giving in marriage, and there'd be two men sleeping in the bed, and two humans actually is the way that was. I don't think it was gendered to mean that, you know, there were two men males sleeping in the bed necessarily, and one would be taken and the other one not, and that didn't mean a rapture, because the next level doesn't take people over. That's a, you know, a bad translation of the word, the Greek word for taken, because there's a lot of ways to translate that, and I think the correct translation is that, well, I could go to it and look at it, but I don't want to take the time to do that right now. I'm driving anyway, so it's not the best time for that. But if you look it up in the Greek, I'm sure you'll see options that are more accurate to the way the next level does set up a circumstance to where they're capturing, because the word rapture really translates to capture. Like Jesus said, I'm going to make you fishers of men. And Tiendo said that the next level were like ranchers that would capture wild horses that were like humans and offer them training to become more civilized in human terms, more, you know, more able to serve humans. Because that's the nature of evolution, is that you're serving the next level of evolution above you. That's if you are going to become, that's if you have a pocket for that service. in your mind, in your genes, in your mental genetic structure. You know, from being connected to the entire human kingdom. If you don't have an empty pocket, the next level doesn't have anything to fill their frequency with. I think that's the way Doe was talking about it the other day on a tape that Kathy and I were listening to. And that it can be filled by something artificial, like the space alien's mind, which is an artificial mind. It's a facsimile. It's a mimicking of the next level's ways, behaviors and ways. You know, they'll even have people be celibate, thinking that, you know, they're showing God that they're willing to not have that pleasure or that facility of having children, not because, you know, it did say that Jesus said that those who are accounted worthy to receive life in this world and then in the next don't marry and aren't given in marriage. So that's where the Catholics got it from, I guess. And there were other things said about that. And if there's no marriage, there's no sexuality, according to the next level. That was, you know, their desire was so that humans weren't going to be totally promiscuous and sleep with anybody they want to and impregnate anybody they want to and not take responsibility for those offspring or just, you know, be popping babies all the time. That they should just take one wife, the males. Of course, you know, that's the way the society developed. And by the way, females have just as many opportunities to grow just as well and as strong as males do. So so even if they're doing tasks that look like they're lesser, I mean, this might be something that you would say that, oh yeah, that's something a male would say, so that they would keep the females down, right? To make them think that they're doing something important. Well, see, that's the way that things get twisted and turned against you, against the truth, against the reality, that there is no gender in the next level. So souls need to overcome the characteristics of both genders, either genders, in order to be non-binary, which I heard the other day what was some kind of preacher that was somehow related to Jesus, that was recorded by somebody on the right-wing side of things in a conservative talk radio show that I listened to on the radio, and he was playing this tape of what sounded like a female voice leading a congregation through a type of prayer. And one of the things it said in the prayer was that we're praying to a God that's non-binary, which I thought was pretty interesting. And then people would repeat that. I mean, they'd all be saying it at the same time, actually, but the one person you could hear a little louder because they were leading the congregation and that thing that they had all memorized. And that they were non-binary, and that that God was identified by the pronoun that was a plural pronoun. Well, that's the first time I heard that it was related to God. And the fact is that I think they picked that up because of, I don't know, I can't say it's from me, but I don't know that T and Dope put much effort into it. But it could also be in the atmosphere because even Tiendo's small efforts to talk about things and understand things are thoughts that go out into the ether and become tappable by the next level. And I mean, not next level, by the human kingdom. The humans in the kingdom that have an open pocket for that understanding. That God was, like Tiendo said right in the beginning, was a many-membered kingdom, where a lot of Christians take offense with the use, but by saying that that kingdom has to do with a type of kingdom with a king and subjects, and they've told me, I know, because I've debated people, dozens and dozens of Christians in all different ways, face to face and on the internet for years. And what some of them would tell me about the use of the word kingdom was that it didn't mean that it was a many-membered kingdom. It meant that there was that it was the authority. It represented authority. And so I would say to the person, okay, well, authority, yeah, it does represent the authority, but why would Jesus use Bastille in the Greek that refers to, a kingdom of living beings? And I mean, the angels are talked about, the archangels are talked about. An archangel is actually defined as a captain of angels, so it's a captain of crew members. So what you're describing is an organization, like I used to call it sometimes a corporation. Just so we can get our heads out of the religious vernacular that gives us a distorted perspective of the reality of the next level. And we've all been raised with that. So, if we hate hearing about things that we think of as religious, then that might be something to overcome. Because when the next level comes back, depending on how they do it, in the next time that they start a garden, the same ideas will be talked about, but the examples may be different, and the timing of examples, and how exactly it's going to happen is probably going to be different, because the next level is growing and learning from this experience, and they don't do the same thing twice unless there's a good reason for it. They're always improving on things. That's the nature of the next level. And so well, I probably got way off track from the Jesus material, but I'll get back to it now, because I kind of lost where I was going there. Well, the same overcoming will always be, well, I shouldn't say always, but there's certain things to overcome that, it's humanness, human mammalian behaviors and ways, which the whole kingdom is saturated with naturally. But it's also had the influence of next level members interjected into it periodically, and that the power of their thoughts is like Tina used to use the little silly analogy of how a cowboy can ride herd over a lot of cattle. That's not putting cattle down, but the cowboy in that context is more evolved than the cattle. I mean, we may not think so because of the way the cowboy acts, but the cowboy at least has the choices to behave differently. And animals, although they have their own choices to make as well, a lot of their reactions are instinctual and according to how they were trained. And so they learn from experience of, displeasing their master, whoever that is. And so maybe that means, getting a little swell in the behind once in a while, or I imagine being hit by a cattle prod. I don't know that the next level is against that kind of minor pain. Cows have a pretty thick hide, so they could probably handle it. I mean, it could be abused by people too. I mean, people use ropes or whips or things like that to get the attention of the animals. And I don't know that that was wrong. We can think that, we should negotiate with the animals. But, there isn't going to be negotiation. Next level doesn't necessarily negotiate with us. Well, in a sense they do. It's not really a negotiation, I don't think, though. It's that they don't want to throw us away if we still offer them a potential for service. Because their whole drive is to be of service to their older members, who are in service to their older members, who are in service up the line to the Chief of Chiefs. And where the Chief of Chiefs came from, we won't be able to understand until we're members of the next level. We'll understand more of that. Because it is a need-to-know basis on what people can draw in to their consciousness. And so that boggles the mind, of course, but it does my mind anyway, but I've learned to live with it, so it doesn't really boggle my mind anymore. But, so there I go again. So let me get to the next big showing of the return of the next level, of course, is the Book of Revelation, which means the book of the Apocalypse, which is the Greek word for the revealing, the period of time of revealing the truth about the next level. And so that's what it's all about. And I'm not saying everything in this book is accurate, because Doe said it was not. But he only gave us one example of the 1,000 years that Lucifer was locked up as not being accurate. But then when I was working on the book, I found other things that were not accurate because of what I knew from T and Doe's material. Anyway, I don't want to get distracted with those right now. But the beginning of Revelation 11, I want to jump to, even though other chapters I'll probably also include in this, because they all show aspects of what the second coming looks like. And many human Christians are probably not going to see what I'm seeing. And that's always their choice. I mean, most of the time, they won't even look at it, and especially not with an open mind, because they've been programmed to think that if somebody says something that sounds new to them, it's not right. So you got to talk to them only in terms that are in the Bible, by quoting the scriptures. And yet, the scriptures don't apply that much now. They do, but not as much as the current thinking applies that we got from Tiendo. So, chapter 11 has to do with the two witnesses. And it says that there are two olive trees and there are two candlesticks. And that they stand before the God of the earth. Well, the God of the earth, according to Doe, is T. Now, T didn't need to bring all of her mind with her to do this task. So for all we know, T, with her next level vehicle, because she could also operate more than one vehicle. So she could have another vehicle in the next level, or more than one, to do tasks simultaneously with. And that's according to Doe. And so the God of the earth, according to Doe, T was the chief administrator, is the chief administrator of the earth. So that sounds like the God of the earth to me. Now you can have all these comments, I know, God of the earth, and how come, she didn't know everything, and because they only bring enough mind to do the task. And they don't want to get distracted, they don't want the students to be distracted. It's like, you have to learn math basic math before you can get to calculus. And so you don't want to start talking calculus, or it'll just sound like Greek to the people that are the beginner math students. It's really that plain and simple, I think, a way of looking at it accurately, more accurately. So I'm coming up on my exit. So the two witnesses being olive trees and candlesticks, you kind of want to look at and look for references to that symbolism in order to figure out what they're talking about. And that takes you to the Old Testament. And essentially, it takes you to before Zechariah, but Zechariah chapter 4 talks about the two as being olive trees. And the olive trees are the fruit that can be pressed into oil, and that oil is what provides the energy that when consumed gives off light. See, all that symbolism has actual accurate representations of what's really happening. Because, like Jesus said, he was the light of the world, and that he was giving his Father's light to us, the disciples, wherever we are, whoever they are. Don't really like to talk to myself as a disciple, but I guess I am. I'm a student, so I am. But that doesn't mean that I was, I'm claiming to be somebody returned from being with Jesus. I don't know what happened then. Anyway, I do have some indications from Doe that this vehicle's, the soul that took this vehicle had a relationship with, in the Moses camp, as Bezalel, who was one of the carpenters on the construction of the Ark of the Covenant, which Doe told me, because at one point Doe, in about 1993 or so, or 4, gave each student a piece of paper that said the name of somebody that we could look up in the Bible and read about, and then we should just forget about it after that. But he felt he had instructions from T, who was outside her vehicle at the time, to give us that information. So I'm sure he thought about everything he wrote on those little notes to each one of us. And I didn't see anybody else's note. I did what he said. I threw it away when he was done with it. And I looked it up and saw that reflection of. But that doesn't mean I was there when. That doesn't mean I was identified as anybody that we know about from names that are in the New Testament that were with Jesus. For all I know, I was somebody that, was new to things and maybe didn't even grow my soul much at all. Maybe I grew it a lot, and maybe I just flunked out because I, didn't keep up. It doesn't matter why. I mean, at this point, it doesn't matter why. Well, I mean, it matters why, so that I can learn to not repeat that. But there were a lot of things that showed me that my mind was pretty young still, even though I was in the classroom all that time and was given some service. But see, the thing is, we really can't judge ourselves. But then again, to use that as an excuse for not doing better, that's not a next level way either. But, anyway, so the two witnesses are demonstrated in Zechariah 4 of being Christ's. Because it says that in Zechariah 4 that they're the anointed ones. And the anointed ones had to do with those that are given a task by their older member, anointed with oil is the tradition of that, olive oil. And so that's what the definition of a Christ is, somebody that is, their whole body is filled with light, which Jesus talked about that. Anyway, so I just wanted to get to that part of the second coming because there's debates about who those two witnesses are, and the fact is that they are all the entities that are reflected in those scriptures of Adam, Enoch, Moses, Elijah, Jesus, and then Doe. And T is reflective of being the older member that was Elohim, the true definition of Elohim, and Jehovah, and any of the names that they had throughout the Old Testament, and then the Father. And next time I come on and do this, I see Finch. I'll continue with Revelation 11. Samuel Lawless, hello. I see in these dark driving videos such as paintings by Rembrandt, for example. That's funny. So, good night, folks. I'm going to turn in now, get into my little abode and see Kathy, and it feels good to be able to give you little doses of my limited ability to talk about the meaning, what I believe is a decent, in many cases, interpretation and relationship of Tian Do to the record books. Good night, folks.